Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Roger Paul, and tonight we are going to continue our study of paper 39. On section 2, paragraph 14, that's on page 431.3, if you're following along in the book. And this is the section on the Superior Seraphim, I believe is what we were talking about here. Let me just make sure. Yeah, the Superior Seraphim. Last time, and we got down to the 6th section, the recorders. So let's say a little prayer and we'll get started. Father, thank you for bringing us together tonight that we might study this wonderful revelation you've provided for us. We thank you for the opportunity to do this. We thank you for those who come and listen. Pray that you'll open our hearts and minds that we might remember a little bit of it, share it with others, and we might prepare ourselves for the mansion worlds, for the life to come. We thank you for our Creator Son and our Created Mother Spirit. We say this in their name, and amen.
Amen.
Okay, the recorders, dear, you're up first tonight.
Okay.
6, the recorders. These personalities are especially concerned with the reception, filing, and redispatch of the records of Salvington and its associated worlds. They also serve as special recorders for resident groups of superuniverse and higher personalities, and as clerks of the court, and as clerks of the courts of Salvington, and secretaries to the rulers thereof.
Okay, so like we said before, everything is recorded on every level. So the recorders record everything that goes on in Salvington and the associated worlds with Salvington. But they're also the clerks of the Salvington courts and secretaries, so that when the traveling courts go around and make a decision about something, they actually record it. So they have that available for future sessions or future courts that might come up. All right. Jane, would you like to take the next one, the broadcasters?
Okay. Broadcasters, receivers, and dispatchers are a specialized subdivision of the Seraphic recorders, being concerned with the dispatch of records and with the dissemination of essential information. Their work is of a high order, being so multi-circuited that 144,000 messages can simultaneously traverse the same lines of energy. They adapt the higher ideographic techniques of the Seraphic chief recorder, and with these common symbols maintain reciprocal contact with both the intelligence coordinators of the tertiary Seraphim and the glorified intelligence coordinators of the Seraphic core of completion.
Okay, so anytime something needs broadcast or receive, it would be these seraphim that's in charge of it. All right. It's interesting here too that they say they could send 144 messages simultaneously over the same line of energy. That doesn't mean it's limited to 144. That's just one line of energy. So there's probably thousands and thousands of lines of energies that these messages come in through. So there's multiple amounts of messages that come in. All right. So these seraphim, along with the tertiary Seraphim, keep all the intelligence information that comes in and the broadcasts that come in and out of Salvington. All right. Let's see, Letch, would you take the next one, please?
Yes. Seraphic recorders of the superior order thus effect a close liaison with the intelligent core of their own order and with all subordinate recorders, while the broadcasts enable them to maintain constant communication with the higher recorders of the superuniverse, and through this channel, with the recorders of Havona and the custodians of knowledge on paradise. Many of the superior order of recorders are seraphim, ascended from similar duties in lower sections of the universe.
Okay, so it not only goes from Salvington down, but we're talking about intelligence reports and things like that that comes from all the way from paradise down, right? So these recorders are kind of midway between the super universe and the local universe. So they keep everyone in communication with everyone all the way up through Uversa, Havona, and eventually to paradise. And it mentions here that they're in touch with the custodians of knowledge on paradise. So if some issue comes up and they need to know information on it, they can get this information from the custodians of knowledge on paradise itself. So if they want to know how to do a certain thing, they can relate this information to paradise, and then the custodians of knowledge say this is the standard procedure, the way we do it in paradise, right? So that way the rule of paradise touches even down to our level. All right. Gary, would you like to take the next one, please?
Okay. Seraphic recorders of the superior order, thus, am I on the right spot?
Yep.
No.
No, the reserves. No.
Yeah.
The 7, the reserves.
7, the reserves, large reserves of all types of the superior seraphim are held on Salvington, instantly available to dispatch to the farthest most worlds of Nebadon, as they are requisitioned by the directors of assignment or upon the request of the universe administrators. The reserves of Superior Seraphim also furnish messenger aids upon requisition by the chief of the brilliant evening star, who is entrusted with the custody and dispatch of all personal communications. A local universe is fully provided with adequate means of intercommunication, but there is always a residue of messages which require dispatch by personal messengers.
Let's go ahead and get that last sentence too, Gary.
The basic reserves for the entire local universe are held on the seraphic worlds of Salvington. These cores include all types of all groups of angels.
Okay, so it's interesting here that they have this core of beings for messages and things like that, but they have a separate group of angels that can be dispatched with personal messages themselves. So if the creator son wants to relay a message that he does not want to be broadcast over the circuits, he can give the message to one of the seraphim, and the brilliant evening star will dispatch that seraphim out to wherever the creator son wants to send that message to personally of a specific communication or person, right? So it's kind of interesting. So the reserves work like the reserves in the last group we had, right? Okay, Supervisor Seraphim, section 3. This is the next level of Seraphim. Rodney, would you take that one, please?
Yes. This versatile order of universe angels is assigned to the exclusive service of the constellations. These able ministers make their headquarters on the constellation capitals, but function throughout all Nebadon in the interest of their assigned realms.
Okay, it's giving me a message that our internet connection's unstable probably because of the storm we're having here. So if we lose you, we'll try to get you back. Okay. All right. So the Superior Seraphim is in the service of the constellation, just like, all the different levels, they go down and down and down and down. So the Supervisor Seraphim are mostly in service in the constellation itself. right? But they can function all the way through down through all Nebadon. All right, so let's go to the first one here, the supervising assistant. Now this is the sub-level of the supervisor seraphim. They have 7 levels just like the previous one did, right? The sub-levels. Okay, Diane, you take the next one.
1. Supervising assistants. The first order of the supervising seraphim are assigned to the collective work of the constellation fathers, and they are the ever-efficient helpers of the Most Highs. These seraphim are primarily concerned with the unification and stabilization of a whole constellation.
Okay, so remember that the Most Highs, this is a picture of this, the Most Highs, well, went down too far, are at the constellation level. The Most Highs would be what? Morondidek's sons, right? And there's 3 of them that's in charge of a constellation for each constellation. So the supervising assistants or supervising seraphim would be the aides or the secretaries for the Most Highs, the constellation father, and the junior Most High also. All right. Okay, and the next slide is an interesting little tidbit that talks about, it says the rotation of the Most Highs on Urantia was suspended at the time of the Lucifer rebellion. Normally they rotate them fairly regularly, but it was suspended at the time of the Lucifer rebellion. We now have the same rulers who are on duty at that time. We infer that no change in these rulers will be made until Lucifer and his associates are finally disposed of. In other words, until the Ancients of Days has made all their judgments, and then they will be gotten rid of if that happens, right? So the constellation fathers that were loyal and in charge are the same ones that are still there now. And they probably still have the same supervising assistants or supervisor seraphim also, right? Okay. Jane, would you take the next one? Number 2, the law forecasters.
2. Law forecasters. The intellectual foundation of justice is law, and the local universe law originates in the legislative assemblies of the constellations. These deliberative bodies codify and formally promulgate the basic laws of Nebadon, laws designed to afford the greatest possible coordination of a whole constellation consistent with the fixed policy of non-infringement of the moral free will of personal creatures. It is the duty of the second order of Supervisor Seraphim to place before the constellation lawmakers a forecast of how any proposed enactment would affect the lives of free will creatures. This service they are well qualified to perform by virtue of a long experience in the local systems and on the inhabited worlds. These seraphim seek no special favors for one group or another, but they do appear before the celestial lawmakers to speak for those who cannot be present to speak for themselves. Even mortal men may contribute to the evolution of universe law, for these very seraphim do faithfully and fully portray not necessarily man's transient and conscious desires, but rather the true longings of the inner man, the evolving Morontia soul of the material mortal on the worlds of space.
So since part of their duty is to make sure that free will is never infringed upon, okay, so we always have free will. Since this is their part of their job, even here on this planet, when mortal man through his own free will makes moral decisions which may be affected, which may affect beings higher than us and even up to the constellation level, then these seraphim would speak for us in places where we can't speak for ourselves. In other words, if they're coming up with a law which may take chance to infringe on something of a moral free will decision of a mortal creature, then these seraphim would be there to defend our viewpoint or explain to the constellation fathers why we think it should be this way. Okay, so it even gives us a voice, even at our point in existence, to actually change the laws of the universe, right? So every decision you make that's a moral decision may affect other beings, right? That's why it's so important to understand the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man, because when you talk about the brotherhood of man, when something affects your free will, it affects the free will of every other creature, right? All right. Next, Letch, would you take the next one?
Okay. Social architects. From the individual planets up through the Morontia training worlds, these seraphim labor to enhance all sincere social contacts and to further the social evolution of universe creatures. These are the angels who seek to divest associations of intelligent beings of all artificially, while endearing to facilitate the interassociation of will creatures on a basis of real self-understanding and genuine mutual appreciation.
All right. I'm not going to say a lot about that because it explains it even more in the next paragraph. Let's go on to the next paragraph and then I'll comment on that. Gary, would you take the next paragraph?
Social architects do everything within their providence and power to bring together suitable individuals that they may constitute efficient and agreeable working groups on Earth. And sometimes such groups have been themselves reassociated on the mansion worlds for continued fruitful service. But not always do these seraphim attack their ends. Not always are they able to bring together those who would form the most ideal group to achieve a given purpose or to accomplish the certain task. Under these conditions, they must utilize the best of the material available.
Okay, y'all think about this for a minute. The social architects try to put beings together into groups, social groups, that can accomplish something that is important to the universe. Okay, and they do that with mortals on Earth. So these social architects actually influence us individually to put us in groups where we can grow or we can accomplish some task in our lifetimes. And many of these groups, once they put them together, will continue this work when they get onto the mansion worlds. Okay, what would be an example of that? Well,
Us.
you're participating now, us in one right now, right? We're a social group that's been brought together to study, right? So these social groups, what we start here, if we don't accomplish our goals here, we may get the opportunity to finish whatever we start here when we get to the mansion worlds. Make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so what you're saying, if we don't get it right here, we're going to remedial classes in the next world.
Yeah, that's right. And the nice part about that, Gary, is we'll have better brains there, right? So whatever we learn, we'll retain. Now, Rodney, did you have something to say?
Yeah, do these social architects only work with mortals?
No, they do this on the Morontia level all the way up to Salvington. Well, actually, all the way up to the constellation level. Okay, because that's their purview. All right. And let's go to the next paragraph, and we're going to talk about that just a little bit more. Rodney, you take the next one. These angels continue their ministry.
These angels continue their ministry on the mansion, to answer my question,
There you go.
and higher Morontia worlds. They are concerned with any undertaking having to do with progress on the Morontia worlds, in which concerns 3 or more persons. 2 beings are regarded as operating on the mating, complemental, and partnership basis. But when 3 or more are grouped for service, they constitute a social problem and therefore fall within the jurisdiction of the social architects. These efficient seraphim are organized in 70 divisions on Urantia, and these divisions minister on the 70 Morontia progress worlds encircling the headquarters sphere.
Okay, so whenever you have just 2 beings, you have a complemental, mating, or a partnership basis, right? When you get 3, then it changes the interaction of those beings together. Okay, so you end up with a different social problem. So that's where these social architects come in. Why do you think that is? Because we, each and every one of us, have a different way of perceiving life, right? And learning about things. So when you have a partnership and you work with a partner constantly, like me and Diane work together as husband and wife, we get to know each other well enough that we almost can finish each other's sentences. You know what I'm saying? Because you get to know people very well. But when you add a 3rd person, their personality does not interact the same as you do with that partner relationship. So it changes the social makeup of a group. So not only 3 people, but when you get something like this where we have 6 people tonight, that changes the dynamics completely, because each one of us have different backgrounds. We perceive things differently. We're on different level. So that makes the social interaction of our group totally different than it would if we were just 2 people talking, right? Makes sense? Yeah, Gary.
Have you ever thought about the fact that they, these people, angels, get involved when there's 3 or more? And if you look at the, I've talked to people from Cuba, and they said if 2 people would be talking on the street corner, the local representative of the government would come and join them to make sure they weren't plotting. So kind of would make it like God's watching all over the communists.
Yeah, it does. You know, that's not only happening there, but how about places like China, right? You know, they have videos everywhere now. So they know exactly what everybody's doing and saying everywhere, right? And if you think about it, with artificial intelligence, that's happening in this country too, right now, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, things change. And actually, I think of the social architects much, in many ways, a protection of our rights as individuals, because what they do is they put groups together, but they can also monitor how these things are infringing on our moral rights, right? It really does. So as that happens, many things have to change over time. So as some of these things come in, they may run a course, but sometimes many of those things have to be changed. All right. All right. So let's go on to the next one, the ethical sensitizers. Number 4. Let's see who's up next. Who just read? Rodney, I think you're back up here.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. 4, ethical sensitizers. It is the mission of these seraphim to foster and to promote the growth of creature appreciation of the morality of interpersonal relationships. For such is the seed and secret of the continued and purposeful growth of society and government, human or superhuman. These enhancers of ethical appreciation function anywhere and everywhere they may be of service as volunteer counselors to the planetary rulers and as exchange teachers on the system training worlds. You will not, however, come under their full guidance until you reach the Brotherhood schools of Adentia, where they will quicken your appreciation of those very truths of fraternity, which you will even then be so earnestly exploring by the actual experience of living with the Univitatia in the social laboratories of Adentia, the 70 satellites of the Melchizedek capital.
Okay.
Social laboratories of Adentia? That sounds spooky.
Frankenstein.
Yeah, really?
Okay, so the ethical synthesizers, all right, they will be there to help us interact. And it mentions here with the living of the Univitatia. You all remember what the Univitatia is? The Univitatia are local beings at that level. And we will end up living with them to learn their social habits and interact with them. So that's where these ethical synthesizers will come in, because they will look at things differently than we do, coming from a mortal background, right? So our ethics are going to be different than the Univitatia will be. So that's where these ethical synthesizers will come in and help us, buffer or modify our reactions of living with a different type of being, right? So kind of interesting. All right. The
There's definitely a
transport.
simultaneous pattern there
Yeah,
for other people from other parts of our country,
yeah.
the world. we
Yeah.
live in now.
Did y'all hear that through my mic? Did you hear
No.
what she said?
No,
Unmute your mic for a second here. Go ahead.
What?
Tell them what she said.
Oh,
There's a pattern, definitely a pattern.
yeah, there's a similar pattern here that we have with each other and with other cultures that we integrate with or who integrate with us. So it's just that, there's a parallel there.
I just thought of something, and maybe I
Yeah.
shouldn't bring it up, but if I shouldn't, we'll cancel it, okay?
All right.
But
How dare you?
as, huh?
How dare you?
As we go through the progressiveness, it
Mhm.
seems like we become more uniform with the will of God.
We do.
And-
We become more
and-
moral and more ethical too, Gary, right?
And I wonder if we lose our freedom, because it reminds me like the civilian gone into the military. He goes in with civilian clothes. The next thing, his hair is cropped. The next thing, his uniforms, he's got a uniform. And after that, his mind started, the physical and the mental process goes on. And
Mhm.
it's kind of like what is happening in Urantia. In your mind kind of goes, I wonder if you would lose all your free will once you get to the point where you can talk to God, would it be like you'd be a clone?
No, not even close. That's what some of these angels are doing. The ethical synthesizers and the other group we just talked about that keeps our free will intact. In other words, that's what their job is, to make sure that we still have our own free will. We just don't fall into a slot, as they say,
Individuals.
We're still individuals. And the interesting thing about what you're talking about, Gary, is when you're in the military, well, you know this from being in the military, once you get through all this initial training, and you're all taught to think and act and the same, that sort of thing, then's when your own free will really starts to blossom, because the things you decide are definitely coming from you, not from what you're told to do. right? Over a period of time, because you could just become a automaton, really, yeah, a drone really easily if you let yourself, right? And that's why many of the military wants their people to be that way. Countries like China, they want them to all think alike, they want to look alike, they want to talk alike. And when you get out of that norm, then you become dangerous to the government. This is probably why the Urantia book mentions in several places that they didn't agree with communism, right? Because you lose your individuality, right? And that's important, right? So socialist and communist, there's a lot lacking in both those concepts, right? Okay, let's move on to the next one, the transporters. I've probably been muted after that comment, huh?
Maybe.
Yeah. All right, the transporters. You just read there?
I did.
No, or did Jane just read? You just read.
I did.
All right, Jane, would you take the next one?
Okay. 5, the transporters. The 5th group of Supervisor Seraphim operate as personality transporters, carrying beings to and from the headquarters of the constellations. Such transport seraphim, while in flight from one sphere to another, are fully conscious of their velocity, direction, and astronomic whereabouts. They are not traversing space as would an inanimate projectile. They may pass near one another during space flight without the least danger of collision. They are fully able to vary speed of progression and to alter direction of flight, even to change destinations if their director should so instruct them at any space junction of the universe intelligence circuit.
Okay, so this is another group of transporters. You know, we talked about this a little bit last time. This is the constellation level transporters. And who are they talk about transporting? This is both Morontia and spiritual beings, right? Not humans. We're still clear on that, right? And here's a picture of that very fact. They show the transporters here, the Superior Seraphim, transporting Morontia beings or spiritual beings to Urantia or to Jerusalem or to Salvington or back again. Okay, anyone that needs transporting across the universe. Okay, and I also put the chart in here of the circuits, you know, the intelligent circuit ministry of the local universe. Remember, the transporters move along circuits, and that's why I put these in here. And it's there's the 7 circuits of the master universe, which we talked about a little bit earlier. All right, down here a little bit further, we're going to talk at great length about what happens when someone is in Seraphim, a little bit further down here. And I'm going to go into great detail about how this happens. This is how the angels actually transport you. Okay, but not as mortals. Remember, as mortals, our bodies don't get transported, does it? Right? Because it would burn up in the atmosphere. All right, let's go back up to where I was.
Roger,
Yes.
the transporters that we learned about previously
Right.
are the Superior Seraphim. What
Right.
level do they operate on?
They're the level that operates from Salvington down to the constellations. Normally, they can actually operate from Salvington all the way down to the planets, Rodney. I don't want to mislead you,
Okay.
but they're the higher level. With each level we go down, it gets closer and closer to mortal, right? So as you go down the scale, each one of these levels goes down also from the local universe level to the constellation level to the system level, and then down to the planetary level, right? Okay, so these transporters basically are the constellation level transporters. So these would be the transporters that would take a Morontia being from anywhere at the mansion worlds all the way up to the constellation headquarters, right? And in between all those planets, you know, there are hundreds of planets that we go on as Morontia beings. So as those Morontia beings, we have to book transport on one of these transporters, right? These angels, okay, to be in Seraphim. All right. All right, let's go on to the next one. Letch, would you take the next one, the transport personalities?
Yeah. These transit personalities are so organized that they can simultaneously utilize all three of the universally distributed lines of energy, each having a clear space velocity of 186,280 miles per second. These transporters are thus able to impose velocity of energy upon velocity of power until they attain an average speed on their long journeys varying anywhere from 550,000 to almost 559,000 of your miles per second of your time. The velocity is affected by the mass and the proximity of neighboring matter and by the strength and direction of the nearby circuits of universe power. There are numerous types of beings similar to the Seraphim who are able to traverse space and who also are able to transport other beings who have been properly prepared.
So there's other type of transport beings, but they don't tell us a lot about these because they're probably not related to mortals or the ascension plan, or beings that have to be transported from the mortal standpoint or the Morontia standpoint up to the spiritual. But there's probably many other types of beings in the universe because there's lots of other beings they don't even tell us about, right? And they have to get around too. The other thing is messengers. Messengers move very quickly through space. But it's interesting to read here that these transporters actually use the energy pathways or the circuits that are already established, the energy circuits. So they would hop on one of these power lines or energy lines, and they would ride this line all the way to their destination. You see what I'm saying? So it's very, I'm sure it's very involved in the way they do this. Okay, Gary, would you take the next one, the recorders?
Number 6, the recorders. The sixth order of Supervisor Seraphim act as the special recorders of constellation affairs. A large and efficient corps functions on Edentia, Edentia of headquarters of the constellation of
Norlaciac.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
To which your system and planet belong.
Okay, so this is the recorders on the constellation level. Notice how each one of these have the same types of beings as we go down on each level. Okay, and here we have another reserve group, right? Rodney, would you take the reserves there?
Yeah, 7, the reserves. General reserves of the Supervisor Seraphim are held on the headquarters of the constellations. Such angelic reservists are in no sense inactive. Many serve as messenger aids to the constellation rulers. Others are attached to the Salvington reserves of unassigned Verondadeks. Still others may be attached to Verondadek sons on special assignment, such as the Verondadek Observer and sometimes Most High Regent of Urantia.
So we have a Verondadek observer that's on Urantia all the time, and one of these reserves may be assigned to him, right? And stay with him all the time. Who did we lose? You? You just dropped off or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I can see stuff.
I know. But you're not moving.
I'm not moving. I wasn't moving before either.
I don't know. That is. That's strange. What it is. We'll see when you get ready to read if they can hear you still. If not, we'll read through mine. Okay. The Administrative Seraphim. Administrative Seraphim. Unmute yourself there and see if they can hear you.
Or administrators.
Yes.
Whose turn is it?
Both of you guys are.
Oh, okay. It was Diane. She's froze up on us for some reason.
Equals further human representation. Wait for the program to respond.
Give me 1 second here. See if we can bring her back. Well, that means you lost your recording.
Oh, my word, that's right.
Yeah. Okay, let's
Just go ahead and.
no, we'll go back out here and I'll reconnect you.
It's still.
That's okay. Let me see if we can get her back here.
That's good.
2774 377 422. No.
Well, she just popped up. There she is.
Okay.
Yeah, there she is.
Now, let me move on. And you can read.
Okay. 4. Administrator Seraphim. The fourth order of Seraphim are assigned to the administrative duties of the local systems. They are indigenous to these system capitals, but are stationed in large numbers on the Mansion and Morontia spheres and on the inhabited worlds. Fourth order Seraphim are by nature endowed with unusual administrative ability. They are the able assistants of the directors of the lower divisions of the universe government of a creator sun, and are mainly occupied with the affairs of the local systems and their component worlds. They are organized for service as follows. Do you want me to read that? Or?
No.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Mhm.
I am muted.
Okay. The fourth order, notice the fourth order of the administrator seraphim are for the local systems, right? That would be for our system capital, right? Jerusalem. All right. And the administrator seraphim work in all aspects of the universe government of the creator sun on this level. So any aspect of the local government of the local system would be directed by these administrative seraphim. Okay, and this is the types of jobs they would do. Let me bring this down just a little bit. Let's start with administrative assistants. Ooh, it rearranged my world again, didn't it? You're not there again. Yeah, you are. Okay, just put you in a different place.
Oh, okay, there I am.
Yeah. Jane, would you take the next one, please?
1. Administrative assistants. These able seraphim are the immediate assistants of a system sovereign, a primary Lenonandek sun. They are invaluable aids in the execution of the intricate details of the executive work of the system headquarters. They also serve as the personal agents of the system rulers journeying back and forth in large numbers to the various transition worlds and to the inhabited planets, executing many commissions for the welfare of the system and in the physical and biological interest of its inhabited worlds.
Okay, so the administrative assistants, okay, help the system sovereign. Who was our system sovereign before the Lucifer rebellion? Lucifer, right?
Oh, okay.
He was the system sovereign, right? When he rebelled, some of these administrator seraphim got caught in the middle of this rebellion, okay? Because Lucifer was going from planet to planet, sphere to sphere, propagating along with Satan, propagating this concept of rebellion, okay? And many of the administrative seraphim got caught up in this problem themselves, okay? So it wasn't until well into the rebellion, till all people on the planets made their decision, all the celestial beings on the planets made their decision who they were going to follow. Not until that happened did they send out a replacement for Lucifer, which was Lanaforge. And Lanaforge brought his own staff, right? So being a Lananondek son, that's Lucifer, his assistants was Lananondek sons also, okay? And they went into rebellion with him. So when Lanaforge came to our system to take over the sovereignship of the system, he brought his own staff with him, which were Lananondek sons also. Okay, so once that happened, then they took Lucifer away in chains to the Father's prison world. And so then Lanaforge took over, and Lanaforge has been in charge of the system ever since, right? Did you stop a minute?
My face is, I haven't moved, and that it's frozen.
That's weird.
Something's wrong with this computer.
No, this computer was working fine.
No.
I don't know what's going on. Maybe the connection tonight. Okay. So anyway, that's what this picture is about. This shows Lanaforge as the system sovereign and his administrative assistants, administrator seraphim, that assist him. Okay, because he is our system sovereign now. All right. All right, let's go on to the next paragraph before I say anything else. Letch, would you take the next one?
Okay. These same seraphic administrators are also attached to the governments of the world rulers, the planetary princes. The majority of planets in a given universe are under the jurisdiction of a secondary Lanondek son, but on certain worlds, such as Urantia, there has been a miscarriage of the divine plan. In the event of the defection of a planetary prince, these seraphim become attached to the Melchizedek receivers and their successors in planetary authority. The present acting ruler of Urantia is assisted by a corps of 1,000 of this versatile order of seraphim.
Okay, so when Calagasta went into rebellion, all right, there were 12 Melchizedek receivers that came to the planet and took over the government. Okay, so as soon as the 12 Melchizedek receivers arrived, the government defaulted to the 12 Melchizedek receivers, and it stayed that way till the arrival of Adam and Eve. Now, these seraphic administrators went from being attached to Calagasta to being attached to the Melchizedek, the 12 Melchizedek receivers. Now, the problem is this. When Calagasta rebelled, many of the administrator seraphim that were stationed on this planet with him went into rebellion with him. So when that happened, they had to replace those seraphic administrators with new angels, right? With new beings. Now, they stayed attached till the Melchizedek receivers to the arrival of Adam and Eve, and then they became attached to whom? Adam and Eve, right? After 100 years, Adam and Eve defaulted. So guess what happened? The Melchizedek receivers came back, and so those administrative seraphim were reattached to the 12 Melchizedek receivers once again. Make sense? And that was the case until the arrival of whom? Maccabean Melchizedek, right? 900 years before Christ. And that stayed, they are attached to Melchizedek until he died, he left. And then once again, they were attached to the 12 receivers until the arrival of Christ. And in the arrival of Christ, they become attached to whom? Christ himself.
Yeah.
Okay. So they stayed attached to Christ till his death, right? And then those angels were reattached to the reigning prince, well, the reigning controller of the planet, which was one of the 24 counselors. And it's been one of the 24 counselors ever since then, right? Which changes every 100 years. So they're attached to one of the 24 counselors, but they will eventually be attached to whom permanently? Maccabean Melchizedek again, because he is assigned as our vicegerent planetary prince indefinitely in place of Christ, because Christ became the planetary prince, right? Okay, Gary.
When Christ was on the earth, didn't he give up his control of that while he was on his mission here? And wouldn't these guys be assigned to, was it Emmanuel that substituted for him during his?
Yes, that would be
So-
true for the 30 years he was on earth. That would be true,
Yeah.
Gary. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm somewhat
thinking right.
understanding, Gary. It's an
Yeah.
accomplishment.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Whoever's in charge of the planet, that's who they're attached to at that point. Now, upon the death of Christ, who automatically becomes, they become attached to was the first of the 24 that came down to manage the planet during that period of time. Make sense? Because every is it 100 years, 1,000 years? I'm probably mess this up, but it changes, right, to one of the 24. And it's going to be that way until Maccabean Melchizedek makes a move to become the permanent planetary prince of the planet as Christ's vicegerent.
Why would that take them so long?
There's no hurry in the universe there. You know, 1,000 years to these guys is like a weekend to us, you know. He's not going to get in any big hurry.
If you think the South is slow, wait till you get to heaven.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. Okay. Justice guides. Let's keep moving. Let's see. Gary, I think you're up again.
Okay, number 2, the justice guys. These are the angels who present the summary of evidence concerning the eternal welfare of men and angels when such matters come up for adjudication in the tribunals of a system or a planet. They prepare the statements for a preliminary hearing involving mortal survival, statements which are subsequently carried with the records of such cases to the higher tribunals of the universe and the super universe. The defense of all cases of doubtful survival is prepared by these seraphim, who have a perfect understanding of all details of every feature of every count in the indictments drawn by the administrators of universe justice. So
Okay.
they're the lawyers.
They're the lawyers. And think about it this way, y'all, that we got two different situations in which the justice guides come into play. First of all, they have to represent angels or other celestial beings that have rebelled, right? So if an angel or a celestial being is found guilty or is charged with rebellion, then the justice guides would be there to represent them for their defense. Okay. Now the difference is this: when human beings live their life and we die, we are not conscious of this judgment, are we? Because our guardian angels go through and justify our life separately from us, right? You just dropped out again there 5 minutes before the end. So our guardian angels do this for us. So we're not conscious of this adjudication. But this is not the case for celestial beings, either a Morontia being, an angel, or anyone like that. They actually have to appear through probably reflectivity before the Ancients of Days, and these justice guides are there for their defense. Make sense? So when they're adjudicated, they're quite conscious of their adjudication. You see the difference? Different type of situation. So that's where these justice guides comes in very, very handy. Also, if there's some question in a human being about their defense, these justice guides may be used along with your guardian seraphim to justify something in your life also. Make sense? But you will not be aware of that because you won't be conscious. All right. Okay. Let's see if we can
What
get
happens,
these two.
Roger, what
Go ahead.
happens if a angel, say, is found guilty? Does it get erased from the book of life, or?
Just like we do. Yeah, just like we do, Gary. If
Yeah.
they do not repent, they will be erased from existence just as we do.
Okay,
So
adios.
they're given every chance for repentance, just like we're given every chance for repentance, right? You know, they have a statement in the New Testament and the Old Testament actually that Jesus brought up one time. He said, the wages of sin are what?
Yes.
Death.
Death, right? The wages of sin is death, and it still is that way, both for angel and man, right? All right, I've run out of time. We'll take it up from 4 or 5 on next time. So let's say a little prayer. And a lot of information here, right? Bunch of stuff.
My hearing went out too.
You're hearing that too? Yeah, it disconnected you. It's probably our network out there, then, more than likely. I don't know why I stayed connected. It's probably these storms. All right, I'll say a little prayer and we'll close for tonight. Father, thank you for bringing us together tonight. Thank you for your love and understanding. Thank you for the justice in this universe. Thank you for these angels that watch out for us and help us get along and defend us in cases where we need defending. We thank you for the plan that you've put together for us that we might survive and then we might progress along the pathway and make it to paradise to meet you face to face. We say this in the name of your son, Michael, Jesus of Nazareth. Amen.
Amen.
And thank you everyone at home for joining us. Let me stop Facebook here first.
Y'all come back now.
Y'all come back now.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
We'll see you all. Take care.